She poured herself a stiff drink, snorted the lines of coke, and decided that once again she'd have to prove she wasn't frigid. Instead of putting on the lingerie he bought for the occasion, she put on her sexiest dress, fresh lipstick, and left her wedding rings on the dresser. Now it's time for Puppets, Pupils, and Producers, a story of mind over matter. Losing herself in the magazines depicting fairy tale weddings, Cassie planned the occasion without appreciating the significance of it. Then, almost a year later, she stood at the altar of a church, feigning recognition of its God, and promised she'd honor and respect her husband until the day she died. Her parents spared no expense, and at the end of the night, many of the 200 guests commented it was the best wedding they'd ever attended. They raved about the exquisite buffet featuring seafood and prime rib, or they mentioned the 10-piece band and DJ that kept them on their feet. But very few spoke about the joyous couple because by then they'd been together for 10 years, and anyone who knew them well knew their relationship was a shit show. With confetti still in her coiffed hair, the newlyweds boarded a plane for the Dominican Republic early the next morning. Exhausted from being awake for 30 hours, they showered and slept right through till the next morning. Hungry and excited to check out their surroundings, they started their second day as a married couple hand in hand and planned on consummating their marriage that evening. After breakfast, they walked around the resort, along the beach, and finally found a spot at the pool. Inspired by the rum punch, the honeymooners frolicked in the water and floated around together, but most of it was an act, because Cassie kept catching him looking at the scantily clad women far too long. And it was getting under her skin, because in her mind, the vows and piece of paper they'd signed changed things, and he obviously didn't get the memo. But she didn't want to ruin the day or her week in paradise, so despite her experiences of it having the opposite effect, she pretended she wasn't upset and tried to improve her mood with more rum. At dinner, Rich was too friendly with the voluptuous waitress, so she picked at her food and filled her stomach with a bottomless glass of wine instead. She really didn't want to fight, but the disinhibiting alcohol was making it harder for her to hide her disappointment. Drinking a lot himself, Rich was oblivious to his bride's emotional turmoil and said he had a special surprise for her back in the room. Wondering if he'd broken their agreement and bought her a wedding gift anyways, she tried to avert her derailment, but the wheels were already in motion, and it was too late for her to get off the roller coaster. On the way back to their luxurious suite, he stopped to kiss her under the moonlight, but she wasn't interested in pretending his attention wasn't motivated by his pending orgasm, and said she needed to get back to the room quickly because she needed to pee badly. Emerging from the bathroom, her husband proudly presented his gift of a couple lines of coke that he'd smuggled from Canada. Then she noticed her suitcase on the bed and realized he'd knowingly hid the illegal package of powder in her luggage. Already primed, she reacted and accused him of trying to sabotage her nursing license. Without waiting for his excuse, she listed his failures as a husband thus far and ended her rant by saying he'd never change and she'd made a mistake marrying him. After calling his wife an ungrateful and frigid bitch, he left the room saying they'd file for a divorce as soon as they returned to Canada. She poured herself a stiff drink, snorted the lines of coke, and decided that once again she'd have to prove she wasn't frigid. Instead of putting on the lingerie he bought for the occasion, she put on her sexiest dress, fresh lipstick, and left her wedding rings on the dresser. With the rest of the coke in his pocket, Cassie suspected Rich would be looking for a party and would most likely be in the resort's disco. So she found a quiet seaside bar with a handsome bartender. Pretending she believed she was as beautiful as he said she was, she flirted with him until the bar closed. Then she got her revenge. They settled into their new house, filled with the gifts everyone gave in celebration of their union. Cassie kept the house spotless, prepared delicious meals for her husband, and brought home a decent wage working as a nurse. Rich maintained the property, managed their money, and worked his way up to assistant manager at the country club. From the outside looking in, they looked like the perfect couple, but things were far from perfect inside that house.